thank you all for coming and get right to film. There's just a few background things that I want to tell you. First of all, I'm fiercely pro-vaccine. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated. I believe that vaccine saved millions of lives, and that we ought to have laws and rules and incentives to get as many people as possible, to have the broadest vaccine coverage possible. And that's precisely why I think it's critical that we have a safe vaccine supply. And that primarily, the first thing that means is getting the mercury out of vaccines, as you'll see in the film. As you'll see in this film, this is not just a public health issue. This is an issue of corruption. And corruption of one of the most important agencies in our country, which is the CDC, which is a cesspool of corruption. And it's not just me. It's not just me saying that. Since 2000, there's been 4 scathing investigations, federal investigations, one by Congress in 2000, other by Tom Coburn's committee in the United States Senate in 2004, another one by the Inspector General of HHS in 2008, and then another one last year in 2014 by the Office of Research and Integrity. And all of them say that CDC is cataclysmically conflicted. It has conflicts of interest that are corrupting its entire mission, so that it's no longer focused on human health, it is focused on money. And the vaccine industry is big pharma, is one of the biggest industries in the world, $1 trillion industry. The vaccine industry is $30 billion. And the way, there's 2 plates of corruption at CDC. One is the division that chooses which vaccines to add to the schedule. Now, when I was a little boy, I had 5 vaccines. My children got 69, well, the younger ones got 22, the older ones got, the older ones got 22, the younger ones got 69 vaccines. And that's what kids get today. If they want to go to school, they got to get 69 doses, 16 vaccines. And how do those vaccines get added to the schedule? What you would want is that the people who add them are people who are solely concerned with public health. What we know now is that the people who sit on the committees, vaccine advisory committees, are not these independent scientists. They are industry insiders, most of whom have a stake in getting that vaccine on the schedule, because if they get it on the schedule, the company that they're associated with can make up to $1 billion from that. So I'm going to give you an example. Paul Offit, who is a consummate vaccine insider, and he is to what the vaccine industry, what the Tobacco Institute was to the tobacco industry. He is its biggest defender. He's on TV, he writes op-eds for the New York Times, never identifying himself as an insider. But he sat in 1999 on the committee that approved the rotavirus vaccine and put it on the schedule so the kids have to get it. Well, the rotavirus vaccine, he owned the patent to the rotavirus vaccine. 5 years later, he sold the royalties of that patent for $186 million. And according to the best sources, he himself pocketed $40 million. He told Newsweek magazine it was like winning the lottery. So, and in 2008, the Inspector General of HHS, which oversees the CDC, said that 97% of the people who sit on those committees have similar conflicts. So they gave us now 69 vaccines. They have 271 new ones in the pipeline bureaucracy at CDC waiting to have added to the schedule. And they hope, based upon getting those vaccines on the schedule, that they will go within the next 4 years from a $30 billion industry to a $100 billion industry. Incidentally, this is a very profitable sector. Why? Because, first of all, it's the only place where the government orders 100 million people to buy your product. There's no advertising. There's no marketing. The patents never expire. You cannot be sued. The Congress, because they own the Congress, passed a law that said that you can't sue a vaccine company in this country, no matter how badly injured you are, and no matter how dramatic and cataclysmic their negligence. So they're completely free. And then you have the other division of CDC, which is the division of the vaccine program, which is the Immunology Safety Division, which is the division that decides which vaccine, whether vaccines are safe and whether they're efficacious, whether they work. And in September, we've known for many years they're lying because I read the science I wrote a book on. And you can tell I know what junk science is. I read science for a living. I brought over 500 lawsuits, successful ones, and almost all of them had a scientific question. So I've been reading science my whole career. I'm not scared of doing it. You know who is? The press in this country. They get their science from the CDC, and the CDC doesn't have any science. I told CDC repeatedly, you show me. I have a book that's been passed around here with 500 separate studies that show Thimerosal is causing an epidemic of brain injury, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, ASD, and autism in our children. I said to them, because you hear their sock puppets on TV all the time, saying, well, there's hundreds of studies that show that Thimerosal is safe. I said to CDC in my many meetings with them, show me one study that shows Thimerosal is safe, and I will go on the Anderson Cooper show, and I will apologize publicly to the American people, and I will never talk about this issue again. Well, of course they don't have it, and they'll never have one. Why? Because you can't, because it's so dangerous. It's 1,000 times more neurotoxic than lead. You think you can develop a study that shows that lead is safe? No, it's impossible. It's not safe. You all know it's not safe. This is 1,000 times more neurotoxic, and we're injecting it into babies and pregnant women today. So, in September, the senior scientist at CDC's Immunology Safety Division, Dr. William Thompson, finally had a conscience meltdown, and he told Dr. Brian Hooker, Simpson University researcher, raise your hand, Brian, on tape, that for 30 years, or for 10 years, I have been ordered. And this is the guy who is the lead author on the 2 studies that exculpate Thimerosal from autism and the study that CDC says exculpates MMR from autism. And what he says now is that he cheated on those studies, and that for 10 years, all of the studies that CDC has been involved with, that they have ordered all of the people, the scientists who work for them, to lie, to manipulate data, to massage data, and to hide it from the public, and lie to the government and to the regulators. And he didn't just say they ordered me to, he named names. Frank DiStefano, his branch chief. Robert Chen, the director of vaccines. Julie Gerbeny, you'll see in this film, the director of CDC. So, and he wants to testify before Congress. And he says he can't speak. He hired the best whistleblower attorney in this country. He says he can't speak until he's subpoenaed or he'll lose his job. But he wants to be subpoenaed, and he said, I'm done lying. Every time I see a kid with autism, I feel deep shame because we were part of the problem, and now I need to come clean. But he wants Congress to subpoena him, and we need to get Lamar Smith, and we need to get Jason Chaffetz from Utah to subpoena him, because they run the committees that subpoena him. He's turned over something like 100,000 pages of documents. Is it 100,000 or it's tens of thousands, right? Tens of thousands of pages of damning documents to Congress. He wants to be subpoenaed, and we need to pressure them to do it. And I'm going to sit down and shut up, but before I do, I want to ask how many people in this room have a vaccine-injured child? Okay. Now, when you hear people talk about these politicians in New Jersey and Illinois, they took this 120 measles cases, no deaths, a very, very minor measles outbreak. We have measles outbreak every year. They took that and they parlayed it into 101 bills that are now being passed in 36 states, mainly by legislatures that they gave money to, the vaccine industry. The vaccine industry is the biggest lobbyist in America, $2.6 billion a year, twice what oil and gas spends. 5 times for the aeronautics and defense specs. And they're one of the biggest contributors to political candidates, so they've neutralized the politicians. They've also neutralized the CDC, the regulatory agency that's supposed to protect us from the regulated industry, has become a sock puppet and a subsidiary of that industry. They've also gotten rid of all the checks and balances. The politicians, the regulatory agency, the courts, and the bar, they've gotten rid of the attorneys because you can't sue them. So there's no discovery, there's no investigation, there's no tough attorneys looking over their back. And then they've neutralized the press. They're now the biggest advertiser on network news. They give between $3.4 and $5.4 billion a year to newspapers and radios, and those people will not write an article from the opposition. The only people you'll hear from is Paul Laughlin and his ilk, and what he'll say is that the anti-vax, well, people who don't want to get vaccines, which they're now trying to end the exemptions, so they're going to give these people vaccines what they want. It's 2% of the population doesn't want to be vaccinated. Who are those 2%? Are they naturopaths? Are they conspiracy theorists? No. They are mothers with brain-injured children. And they saw their child, they brought their child, and how many, hundreds of times have you heard this story? They brought their child in at 2 years of age, a child who surpassed all milestones, speech, language, athletic ability, and social interactions. They gave that child that MMR shot and 5 other shots that day. That night the child has a fever, has a seizure, and within 2 months his brain has disappeared. So, those people, those women, went to the internet, and in the educated neighborhoods and the affluent neighborhoods, because that's where the most diminished vaccines are. Why is that? Because they're the ones reading the science. They read the same science I read. And there is no science that says it's safe. And there's tons of science that says it did it to your child. And guess what? No matter what the science says, those women know. They know what happened to their baby. So, and they don't want to give it to their that boy's younger brother. Because they think maybe that boy has the same genetic vulnerability that the older child has. So I don't want to vaccinate him. So now, in New York State, New Jersey, Illinois, Texas, North Carolina, Oregon, and Washington, there's now statutes that say you're not going to be able to do any of that anymore. We're going to bring these women in forcibly with the police power. We're going to put our boots on their neck, and we're going to force them to take their kids to take the vaccine, even though they know that vaccine robbed their older child of its brain. These are not people who are crazy naturopaths. They're simply every single person I know who is vaccine hesitant has an injured child. When you think vaccine hesitant, you think the mother of a child with intellectual disabilities, because that's who they are. And we have no right. Now, we've taken away the regulatory agency, we've taken away the press, we've taken away the lawyers, we've taken away the politicians, we've taken away all the checks and balances, and the only thing left standing between that rapacious pharmaceutical company and that child is the mother. And now we're saying we're taking her out. And it's not fair. Anyway, you're watching.